Punk Rock Elite, a podcast about NOFX. It hasn't really been so long, though, has it?
No, but this footwear, thank you so much.
Oh, do you know what? I realised I had an excess of them and thought, I know who wants these.
Our filthy listeners.
All the filthy listeners, that's what you want, isn't it? You shoeverts, which is a shoe pervert. That's what you want, yes. Named after the fact that people used to throw shoes at them, which shows just how much they've improved as a band. So long, and thanks for all the shoes.
It's a big fun one.
It is a big fun one, yes. We're very, very excited about this. Well, I certainly am, as you'll hear. We recorded this a little while ago. We're just recording the intros and the outros now, closer to the date, so we can be a bit more up to date on stuff. But some things don't need to be updated, like So Long and Thanks for All the Shoes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also, welcome to the newer listeners who just listen to the big albums that they like. Hello, how are you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yes. We see you, and we get it.
We understand.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but when getting into a podcast, you sort of, especially if they're covering things you're familiar with, you go, well, I'm going to listen to these ones first and see if I can bear to be around these people for any longer than necessary. Appreciate that, and we get it. So if you're new, welcome. This is Punk Rock Elite Podcast. I'm Eddie French,
and I'm Red Redmond,
and that's the two people who are here pretty much all the time. If you are coming back, welcome. Lovely to see you. Sit down at your regular table. We have them for you. They're all labeled. You just know where they are. So another deep dive today. How have you been, Red? What have you been up to?
I've been very well, thank you. I've been at work. I work at a venue in Sheffield where I put on all of their comedy events. We had Lucy Beaumont last night, who is a lovely, lovely woman and a fantastic comedian. And she was even dropped off at the venue in her Tesla by John Richardson, her famous telly husband off of the telly.
Yeah, and in real life.
Yes, both real.
Yeah, it's not just like if Ted Danson were to drop Kirstie Alley off at work at the height of Cheers. I don't know why I chose something so out of date. I think it's because in the morning they show Frasier and or Cheers on Channel 4, and I think that was the last thing I saw on the telly as I was putting some breakfast together. And went, I remember that show. It's fun.
I mean, that is a classic Eddie reference, I think. I mean,
it really is, isn't it?
If it's an 80s sitcom, it's going to get referenced in the podcast.
It's sometimes, yeah. Sometimes I'm like that.
It's usually MASH, though.
Oh, it's mainly MASH. Yeah, that's my favorite one of the old ones. I'm not wearing my MASH t-shirt. I'm actually wearing my Twilight Zone t-shirt today. Even older.
But speaking of your favourite one, today is your favourite NOFX album.
It is. It's the one that holds... It's the one for me that is NOFX. We all have our NOFX album. We all have the one that we go, do you like NOFX? And bing, that album pops into your head. And this one is mine. As you'll hear, I hold no truck with any criticism. No, that's not true. There's plenty to it. We do talk about it in slightly... less than overexcited, exaggerated ways.
But what have you been up to?
What have I been up to? Well, an announcement was made upon my behalf that I'm now represented by Fruitcake, your agency, which is
that's my agency.
It's your agency, which is nice, and I appreciate it. So I'm now a fruit. I'm now a Fruitcake represented artiste, which puts me in rather esteemed and lovely company, I must say. So that's very, very pleasing.
We've got a nice little roster now. And also, I know we're on air, but I'd still like to publicly apologise for the work that fell through last week. We were briefly going to get Eddie to be the voice of a mechanical dinosaur at an all-day children's event that work fell through, sadly. But let's just think about what could have been.
Yes, absolutely. Well, what happened? Well, to be honest, there's an aspect of that falling through that worked out in my favor. In that for the past 12 weeks, I've been undergoing a routine to try and stop being fat, because the doctor said that's quite enough of that, thank you. If you want your organs to continue working in a way that will produce some sort of life worth living, you need to stop it. So I'm not going to tell you the name of the thing, because I don't want to advertise them, because it's run by an idiot. But not an idiot, a wildly irritating man. Idiocy suggests that he doesn't know what he's talking about. Sadly, he does. Sadly, he's put together a really, really good thing that will work. Unfortunately, he's a devotee of The Secret, the self-help book that's essentially chaos magic for wine o'clock Mumsnet turfs.
I mean, this does sound like you've taken up the meat-only diet of Jordan Peterson.
No, I did this one specifically because I could maintain my meat-excluding vegan diet and maintain it anyway. But no. If I've never met anyone who follows the words of Jordan Peterson without letting you know that before. I mean, this is coming from a vegan, but fuck me, Jordan Peterson fans don't have to talk about that a lot. It's as if they have nothing else. But that's what happens when you need to be told things like tidy your room and have a wash. But if you hear it from a woman, it's too much like your mum, and that makes you sad and angry. So that's broadly my interpretation of Jordan Peterson's appeal. But it got to the last sort of section. This is why I'm getting to this. That dinosaur. The dinosaur training, which I would have been sent for.
There was a day of training.
I am gutted that I've yet to undergo dinosaur training, because that's possibly more excited about that than the actual work.
Because also it's quite interesting, because my understanding is you wouldn't actually be in the suit. They hire professional wrestlers, which is what we were told, to actually be in the suit. It's quite a large suit.
Oh, because it's hefty, and they need some sort of acrobatic and a lot of muscle to be able to
like quite hefty physical performers. So wrestlers are perfect. So you would be off stage with a view of the stage and the audience, and then you would do the voice of the dinosaur into a microphone.
Apparently, I'd have a microphone and a little control pad.
Yes,
I'd be controlling the mouth movements and maybe the eyes and stuff. So okay, I'll give you another ancient reference. I remember when the very first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles film came out.
Yes, there's people in the suits. You can see them.
People in the suits, but all of the faces were operated mechanically by a separate person who did the voices. So they had sort of martial artist-y type people doing the high kicks and all of that stuff, and the running and jumping, and then had people with sort of keyboards basically, and they were all like sort of injection, like with syringes and pneumatics and stuff, and it would operate like that. So I would be essentially doing that and saying, well, possibly saying cowabunga. I never got to read the script, because a big miscommunication meant that I wasn't required. But basically, so the last 3 days of this thing I've been doing or have done involved me having to basically eat 6 meals a day that would have been essentially tofu and greens.
Wow.
And that's 6 times a day at regular intervals. And I'd have had to have carried that around with me throughout the day. And I'd have to have driven. I mean, the drive there and back would have been at least 3 hours.
Oh, I didn't know it was that far.
Well, it was Preston to do the training, and then there was like Derby and somewhere. So not a problem. I was being remunerated sufficiently, and I've driven further for a gig where I've been paid less. So I'm not. Yeah. That bit wasn't the problem. But yeah, so thankfully it meant I didn't have to turn up with like sort of Tupperware of fucking stir fry and be like, oh, excuse me a minute, I am slimming. Well, that's the second meal you've eaten since you've been here. Yeah, I know. I am getting all thin now. So I just didn't need to explain that to people. So I was able to do that in the privacy of my own home without any of that concern. But yeah, so but what it did mean, well, what it has meant is that I've started running just as a regular thing, which is just awful. But it is actually the most useful thing for this podcast because I never really run for longer than the duration of a NOFX album.
Very good.
Not as a rule, just by my own level of fitness. So it means that the last handful of these deep dives we've done have all been, I've been listening to them whilst running, which is quite a good distraction because...
That's a really good idea. That's quite a good idea.
We're getting to the... Because there's nothing else to do but listen to the music. Because if I'm sat at home, I'll pick up my phone. If I'll
yes,
be
of course,
looking at the computer while I'm doing it. I'll be whatever. Even if I'm cooking or something, I'll be distracted for periods where I don't want to cut bits of me off with a knife, for example. So pardon me. So that's what I've been doing. And what's handy is that we've got to the point now where we're in very well charted territory for me.
Mm-hmm.
So long. Anything from sort of after Heavy Petting Zoo, pretty much all of these albums I've heard, I've listened to a lot. So these are all like refreshers. So that's exciting. So yeah, so sadly not a dinosaur yet, but but the good thing is that dinosaurs will die. So
very good.
Well, yeah, but which we got to wait a little bit for because. That's not the next album, is it? Well, it is the next album, full length, but the next release we're doing after this one is The Decline and Timmy the Turtle, because can't leave Timmy the Turtle out. That would be really
it's a banger.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So but we talk about a lot in this one. This one is I think it's a quintessential release and should be in the. I can't see it not being in the top 5 of most people's NOFX list.
Yeah,
to my mind,
absolutely. And if it isn't, like if this is an album you don't like but you like NOFX, please do let us know. Like I would be so interested in why someone wouldn't laud this as one of their better albums.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's. I think Mike has said that he thinks it's their best album at certain points.
Mm-hmm.
He said that. It's come up a few times on our, favorite NOFX album questions that we've asked people. It's something. It was the last one of the 90s. I don't know if that's got something to do with it, which makes it pretty old now. So it'll be coming up for 25 years old.
Ooh,
I know, it's a terrifying thought, but that's all right. Well, we'll talk to you afterwards, I suppose. We'll find out what's what. So here is So Long and Thanks for All the Shoes. Hope you enjoy.
Enjoy.
Ding 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 ding. Bam. It's here. Yeah, it's here. For those not listening, I just did the sting myself vocally just to give us the time frame. So yeah, we might leave that in. Anyway, So Long and Thanks for All the Shoes, released in 1997 on Epitaph Records, a full length by NOFX, released in November of 1997, which is interesting because I always equate this with Sunshine. This album, but that's probably when I was listening to it the most, was during nice weather. But there we go. It was recorded in August though, so that makes sense.
I do think you're onto something. I think it is the most like summer sounding album they have made. There's something that it reminds me of like music festivals, and I don't know, that there is something quite summery about it all.
Yes, which is weird because I don't think there are any actual references to any season whatsoever.
Yeah,
throughout it. But possible not. So yep. So that's doesn't say how long it took to record this one. They were probably able to have quite a nice, not relaxed, but more than 3 days for this one. So that's good. What did you know about So Long and Thanks for All the Shoes prior to this?
Obviously it's one of the albums that I'm more familiar with it being one of their more successful albums.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say this is, and I'm talking in terms of notoriety. I'd say this is probably like their second most famous album, for want of a better word, behind Punk in Drublic.
I think so.
I'm sure people would disagree, but
I think it's this or White Trash.
Yeah, that depends, like when you were sort of like actively into them, I suppose.
Absolutely, yeah. People a shade older than me maybe would be more. Well, it goes White Trash, Punk in Drublic, and then a steady decline. Whereas maybe if you're a bit younger, you might sort of think the decline comes a bit later. Fun, but the sort of the lessening of quality or whatever, just whenever you're into them or not. So yeah. So how did you find listening to it through these past couple of weeks?
I will be completely honest and say it is obviously, I think it's one of their strongest albums, but of their strongest albums, it's not one of my personal favorites. I can totally recognize that it is one of their best albums, but for some reason just to like my own personal taste and whatever, it's not my favorite. But I will say because I've listened to this a lot before doing this episode, it has certainly grown on me, and I do see a lot more. I appreciate it a lot more. One thing that's really jumped out at me in these listens is it has my favorite ska songs that they've done. Because big fan of All Out Angst, Eat the Meek, but then also Flossing a Dead Horse is, I forgot like how good that was, which is sort of like a great sort of ska instrumental. But yeah, I think it's really interesting because I think what really jumps out of me at this album is the sound, because I think it has a relatively unique sound. Obviously, it does sound quintessentially NOFX, but there's a lot of treble in this.
Yes.
And it's not like, it's not the Punk in Drublic sound. Well, I think one of the most impressive things about this is, obviously, we've had Punk in Drublic before this, and then we had a couple EPs, was it? Oh, no, we had Heavy Petting Zoo, which wasn't my favourite.
Sure, we've had the Heavy Petting Zoo was the last full length before this.
Yes,
by a year or two, and we had Fuck the Kids was the release just before this, because we get what do we get? We get Murder the Government and I'm Telling Tim from that EP, gussied up a little bit, put in some nicer clothes, and released on this full length in their ultimate form, I guess.
And I think it's a remarkable return to form, because for me, not a big fan of Heavy Petting Zoo, but I do appreciate the speed and the intensity of Fuck the Kids.
Yeah,
and I feel like here they've, it's a proper full length album where they've clearly spent a lot of time in the studio, overdubbing things, whereas obviously Fuck the Kids was recorded in a day, and they were songs that they weren't even familiar with before the recording sessions. So I mean, it was almost an exercise in, can we do this super fast? And so this is them returning to, oh no, let's actually take our time on things and at least make them a little bit more rounded around the edges. Although, am I right in saying that the actual music themselves for each of the songs were actually written quite hastily?
Mike says that he gave himself a 20-minute limit for each of the songs that ended up on this album. Now, I assume that's just for the actual music and maybe the melody. I'm guessing the lyrics took a little bit longer. That's my own theory. But basically, because Heavy Petting Zoo was so overthought, and Mike has said that he feels that the failings on that album are because it was so overthought and every single little centimeter of it was analyzed to breaking point that it became less of an album that they feel good about, I guess. So that's it. Well, it actually says, I'm reading the liner notes here. The music on this album was recorded in 3 days, but the vocals took forever. Every song, except for Eat the Meek, 180 Degrees, and All His Suits Are Torn, were recorded on the first take. Sloppiness counts. So I'm guessing they were recording it at once, together, but sort of separate, and there will have been overdubs involved in that and stuff. So I'm guessing that's how they did it. They might not have done. It might have been built up in a lay the drums down with a guide track, add stuff on top of it, and all the rest of it. Interesting about this is that I think aside from Eat the Meek, I don't think Hefe sings on this album, and I don't think Melvin sings on this album.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
All of the harmonies are done by Spike Slawson from Me First and the Gimme Gimmes.
Oh, wow. So not even the harmonies?
No backing vocals done by Eric or Hefe.
There are a couple Mel yells, which I'm guessing Melvin
There are
still
some
does.
Mel yells, but the harmony vocals were done by Spike. But there's backups, and also Hefe sings Eat the Meek, or does lead vocals on some of that. But interesting that happened. So and also Nate Albert from I think he was in the Boss Tones. Yes, Nate Albert from the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones plays all of the ska guitar on this.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
All of the uppick, all of the upstrokes, because Mike said their ska game wasn't strong enough, so they brought him in. And now they're using your man from Goldfinger to play some of the all out Anks and stuff like that live because but he's listed in there. It says Chanky Guitar by Nate Albert. So and I think on when they did their split with Rancid, they got one of the Mad Caddies to play the guitar on Radio by Rancid.
Oh, okay.
For the recording and stuff. So, yeah, but
that explains a lot, really, because I think this album sounds more polished than a lot of their previous work.
Yeah,
and I was gonna particularly single out the harmonies as being a real step up. So interesting that they've brought Spike in to do that.
Yes, it seems that Mike is very, very fond of making the album as good as it can be.
Yeah.
However that happens. I mean, right back at the beginning, they had half of Bad Religion doing the harmonies on S&M Airlines and stuff like that. So they bring in whoever they need to make the album, and then they learn how to do it live. I was listening to. We'll probably get to it, so I don't want to go into it too long because it'll probably be an imminent episode on the decline.
Yes,
but which is really annoying because only a few days ago did Krista Makes of Less Than Jake on his podcast release part 2 of his talk with Fat Mike about the writing and recording of The Decline, which is 2 hours straight from the horse's mouth. And I don't know what we can add to that conversation, knowing that exists out there in the world. Oh, it's good when the trombone does the la, la, la bit, So, we'll try it anyway, obviously, because we can't do a podcast about NOFX and not talk about The Decline. That's insane. So, but he said that he played a lot of the guitars on that as well as the bass. And Hefe didn't sing any backing vocals on that. He sings a lead vocal on it, but it was Melvin and Spike doing all of the vocals on it, all the harmony vocals and stuff, which is interesting because you sort of think of Hefe as being the sort of the most musical of them, but it's not what Mike was going for. So it does seem that the more you sort of unpick this, it seems like Fat Mike is kind of the puppet master. That sounds insulting to the other members, but do you know what I mean? It sounds like he's sort of got a very clear vision of what it needs to be, and if someone there can't do it, they bring in someone who can.
But it doesn't sound like that's led to any animosity or negative feelings between the band.
No, absolutely.
And also, what I think is quite interesting is, like, these aren't songs that they struggle to play live. Like, I know they do, as you mentioned, bring in, like, they've got the guitarist from Goldfinger to play a couple songs with them at the moment. But, like, overall, they do play their set themselves.
Yes. So I think with this album, I was mainly talking about The Decline when we should be talking about this. But yeah, with this, I think these are simple songs. They're not complex songs in that there's not the sort of RKL style riffs going on.
Mm-hmm.
It's very chord and octave chord approach to it. It's not there's some little fiddly bits on the guitar. I'm telling Tim's got that lovely doodly in it, that's and all these little flourishes, but it's not sort of single string riffs and stuff like that. It's quite, and I suppose that comes from having that 20-minute guideline on the songs. So that's my theory on it anyway. But so it starts off, what's this? It's my job to keep punk rock elite. Well, that name's never going to catch on.
I don't know. It's a good name for a podcast, though, I think.
It's not as good as The Revolution's going to be a podcast, but we've already given ourselves a hard enough time for that. I mean, as far as I think we're back to your rule of excellent opening numbers, because the guitar is so abrasive and trashy. Mm-hmm. And it's and with that, what you're saying earlier about it being a very treble heavy, upper mid heavy sound, like even the kick drum is super clicky. It's like the most fat sound that they got on one of their albums.
What I think is the bass as well in so many of these songs is like it's so jangly.
Yes,
it's kind of doing the opposite of what a bass usually does.
It's like Kids of the K-Hole starts off, and it sounds like the newest strings that have ever been applied to a bass ever, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like these were still, as he was like threading them in, they were still being wound in the factory. They are that new. It sounds so bright and but it also cuts through. It doesn't feel like there's anything lacking to me. And I think one of the reasons that I really, really latched onto this so it came out like very late 97, which makes sense that I would have heard this sort of the middle of 1998 or so. And it was when we were getting into stuff like that. But that was when a lot of my friends were getting into nu metal, and stuff like Korn and stuff, which was just all bottom end.
Yeah.
And so this was like a drink of water in the desert. You know what I mean? There were melodies, there was harmonies, there wasn't just, crotch grabbing crap. Soz for any nu metal fans out there, but come on. And stop trying to take the Deftones. You don't deserve them. But it's that kind of thing. And so anytime you got your go on the CD player, because this was pre aux cables and everything. This is like so because you had to, like, your physical media was in danger when you fought with your friends over what was going on next. You know what I mean? It was that kind of thing. So and I also felt shortchanged because nu metal songs have gone for ages, and all of these are like 2 minutes, 2.5 at the most. Eat the Meek being 3.5, but that's a very different kind of song. So that's why I think it was a sort of a little oasis in the desert for me. Because it was just so trebly. It was so apparent what it was. But it's my job to keep punk rock elite when it starts out with that guitar. It's so grimy and unpleasant, that guitar tone, but it fits perfectly in the mix, and it just sounds so abrasive. And then the drums kick in. The first vocal you get is a Mel yell. Great. Right out. Some sort of barking thing that he did. It's like quite a new Mel yell as well, because he hadn't really started doing a lot of that, like the actual yelling thing, and it especially used a lot on the Decline, but this is where it sort of first comes in in a big way. And it's just it's a real statement of intent, and it's the first time it's sort of saying, nah, fuck this, you don't get punk rock if you're not punk rock, you don't get to have it. And that's really cool.
Yeah, I think it's as we said, we're back to when they open with just some of the best songs on the album, because I think that is, through listening to their back catalogue, what I've noticed about NOFX is that they front load albums with one of their biggest tracks, and I feel like we didn't really get that with Heavy Petting Zoo. So
hobophobic. It's like, oh, brilliant, a pun, nice one.
It's really weird. Hobophobic feels like a sort of, like those songs towards the end of Punk in Droblick, like Punk Guy and Happy Guy.
Fleas and Happy Guy, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, like where it's just sort of like, yeah, let's stick another one on towards the end of the album, but it doesn't feel like an opener.
Yeah, no, it really doesn't. We've spoken about Heavy Petting Zoo enough.
Of course.
Let's enjoy this. But you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, though. Kids of the K-Hole, a lovely intro that just builds and builds and builds.
Yeah,
it's great because it's not even 2.5 minutes, and yet it gives itself a real big breathing space at the beginning with the ding 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 and all that stuff, and then the octave chord building and the drums coming in and out and stuff. It's really great.
And I think this is really exciting following Fuck the Kids, where, like, you mentioned those like flourishes in the songs, like there's loads of the song will be playing, and then there'll be like a lovely little just guitar like sting almost, like here and there. And these are things that you just didn't get in Fuck the Kids because of the way it was recorded and the way they wanted it to be.
There were no overdubs. It was just all that was happening right there. Yeah, absolutely. Then you get Murder the Government and Monosyllabic Girl, which are sort of, I think, I don't know what, I just put them together because it takes less than
2 minutes.
Less than 2 minutes to listen to both of them. Just over 1.5 minutes for two very different songs, because one is a sort of a straight up anti-establishment sort of thing, and he sung this through, let me see, who would have been in, Clinton would have been in at this point, through Bush, through Obama, through Trump, through Biden. He's just continued to sing this. Although he did sing "Want to Watch the Black House Overturn" when Obama was in the White House, which is funny. But it's just, there's something really sort of boneheaded about it in the approach, but not in the substance. It's sort of very straightforward, which I really like. I think this might be their sort of most no nonsense, and I think that comes from the spirit in which it was made.
Yes, yeah.
Like, let's just make a record almost like we used to, but we're better now.
I think I would struggle to name a songwriter who is capable of writing such short songs that do feel like whole songs. So like Murder the Government, and more so Monosyllabic Girl. Like it really does feel like a full song. It's under 1 minute, but it honestly doesn't need to be a second longer.
No,
like it's in and out. It does what it does, and I don't know. Like I know that I'm obviously like into punk and hardcore, so I know a lot of other bands that like do write and record like shorter songs, but they always feel like the verse of a song. They rarely feel like a full song themselves. I'm thinking like, I don't know, Minor Threat, something like that. Where it kind of feels like, that was definitely an idea, but I'm not sure if I'd call it a song.
It's sort of, it's that thing of, I've got a list of things I want to say, and when I finish saying them, the music will stop.
Yeah.
Which is
yeah.
Which is absolutely valid as an approach.
Absolutely, yeah.
But being able to, there was this is fuck me, this cut is going to be deep for pretty much nobody. There was a band in the 90s called Ultrasound who were a sort of proggy indie band. They had an enormous singer. The singer and guitarist was this huge guy called Tiny, because we were very funny in those days. But I remember reading it. A friend of mine was obsessed with them, and I read an interview in the NME with them, and all of their songs were like 6 minutes long, 7 minutes long, really, really long songs. And they were asked about it, and they said, "It's weird. We've got this compilation of like bubblegum pop hits that are all like between 2 and 2.5 minutes long, and we're just amazed at how they can fit everything they want to do in a song in that amount of time." Because honestly, we're making these songs as short as we can. It's just everything we want to do in that song takes that long.
Yeah.
And I thought that's an interesting, and I thought that that's sort of an interesting thing, because the thing with like Monosyllabic Girl, for example, you've got sort of 2 verses, 2 choruses, and then it's got that lovely bit where everything drops out except for the bass and the vocals, the harmonies and stuff. And it does feel like every little bit of box is ticked. It doesn't have a bridge, but it doesn't need one. There's nothing.
Exactly, yeah.
Because it's also, I mean, I think it was a song about one of them who, I think it might have been Melvin's girlfriend, who just didn't say a lot. And that's a song now, because that's how it works. And I think that's really, really cool. But it's also dead nice. It's it also turns up there's a little nod to it on Biopsy Girl from Single Album. But yeah, I think that's great. And then there's a couple of songs on here that I think feel like a bridge from Heavy Petting Zoo.
Sure.
And 180 Degrees and Dad's Bad News.
Yes.
Because those are 2 kind of slower, chuggier songs. The difference being is not only the production, the guitars are nowhere near as like heavy and sludgy, but also there's melodies in these ones.
Yeah, absolutely. I just, it's difficult to say what this album has that Heavy Petting Zoo doesn't, because I think Heavy Petting Zoo loses its way somewhere in the writing process, and I think this very much, excels in the writing process.
Yeah.
And obviously we aren't in the band, so we can't say exactly.
We've asked. They said no.
Yeah, so we can only speculate as to what made this more successful, but it really is heads and shoulders above a Heavy Petting Zoo, in my opinion.
Sure. Mine too. But yeah, so 180 Degrees, 180 Degrees, I suppose they'll insist it's called, because that's how it's pronounced in the lyrics. But then again, we say Blink 182 instead of Blink 182, like they do in Americans. It's just how we say 1 and 8. I mean, it would be funny if it was 182 degrees. But it's not about that at all. So it's just, yeah. So, yeah, the... I think, is it? Oh no, not 180 Degrees. I'm skipping ahead. It's All His Suits Are Torn. That's the song that reminds me of Heavy Petting Zoo.
Okay, yeah.
News. Sorry, not 180 Degrees. I've no idea why. I've just... Anyway.
There is something... It reminds me of Filthy Philanthropist, All His Suits Are Torn.
Yeah, a little bit. It's a character study, but it's also kind of... it's sort of slower. It's a bit sort of... Yeah, it's got an unusual drum beat. It's got more of a sort of a mod drum beat, like a sort of a Northern Soul kind of sound to it. And similarly with the Dad's Bad News, which is that one that starts with that very... I don't know why the bass at the beginning of Dad's Bad News, that ding, 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 ding. It sounds like those are the loosest bass strings in the world. They sound so floppy and rattly. It's wild. I don't know how that works at all, but well done, everybody. So that's no, all his suits are no, 180 degrees is fantastic. Because it's got the ska and it's got the punk. It's all blended together really nicely. But yeah, All His Suits Are Torn is an interesting one. I think that is like a Heavy Petting Zoo style song, just better, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, no, I think you're completely right. I can hear that. And yeah, I just doing a lot of interesting things. I know you mentioned like the bass sound there. I think it's interesting because I imagine they've used a fair few tricks to record certain parts of this. However, whenever I've heard these songs live, they don't sound too dissimilar.
No, I suppose not. Well, Mike uses I think he uses a Fender Precision to record, and he uses that Dan Electro live because he doesn't have the best of backs, and those Dan Electros are hollow, so they weigh absolutely nothing.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
So that's not his studio guitar. Also, I don't think Hefe uses that Telecaster of his in the studio. I think he uses SGs and Les Pauls. And stuff like that, and uses that guitar because it stays in tune and is reliable, and they know how to work it, basically, as is my understanding from a whole slew of interviews that I've read. But so I think that's it's a great little character thing, is All His Suits Are Torn, which takes us into All Out of Angst, which is a highlight.
Yeah, I mean, I know I've said it before. It's my favorite ska song that NOFX do. I think, and I think it's really, you can hear it in this song. But I think one of the standout parts of this entire album is Mike's bass playing. We've got some really interesting bass sounds in it, but also these walking bass lines, which obviously are very present in All Out Angst.
Yeah.
It's one, they're really, really well written and performed. Like they are like good, technically well-crafted bass lines, but also to then sing over the top of them.
Yes.
I do think that Mike's bass playing is a little bit of an unsung hero of NOFX because we concentrate on his songwriting and him as like the leader of the band and like the production side of it. But he is a very good bass player.
That's true. He has an interesting approach. He uses up picks a lot.
Yeah.
He starts off with an up pick rather than a down pick, which is very unorthodox. And he's got that triplet roll style that he sort of that he believes he created. And I'm not saying he believes he created because I disagree with him. I agree with it. I think he did invent it because I don't know. If anyone knows where that kind of sound like this, like at the beginning of Idiots Are Taking Over, if anyone knows where that kind of thing, if anyone's heard that from someone, what are you talking about? Jaco Pastorius was doing that with his fingers in 1960, then by all means tell me. But I don't think he was.
Do you know who I actually think I'm not saying that it is exactly the same, but I feel like it's in the school of Lemmy's bass playing. Because it's sort of like the way he would like do those driving bass lines that you almost strum it like a guitar rather than.
Oh, he did strum it like a guitar. He played rhythm guitar on the bass.
Yes,
was his thing. So there's a bit like that. I mean, when we saw the Leeds final show, he had Lil Chris from Lagwagon and formerly RKL. And was talking about how he is the greatest punk rock bass player.
Yeah.
He was saying this guy, this is, and you can see that in some of the, in the Decline, actually, you hear that diddling, 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 ding, ding, diddling, 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 diddling. That's super RKL-y.
Yeah.
That sort of open string and then hammering on right up the top of the neck and getting all the weird, playing it like a sort of a weird lead instrument, sort of rhythmically, but also melodically, like really, really, it's hard to do. And the sort of closest thing you get to it is that Tool song.
Sure.
You know that one? I can't remember the name of it, but it's got that kind of biddling, biddling, a lot of hammer-on-y stuff, and people go sort of crazy for that, and then talk about how NoFX are bad musicians, and no people say that more than NoFX, but
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like it's a
but
myth that they perpetuate.
it is, but the thing is that I think people can believe it because everyone has seen NoFX. If you've seen NoFX multiple times, everyone has seen a NoFX show that was, by any other band standard, absolute crap.
Yep.
Like fucking dreadful. But for whatever reason, if you're a fan of NoFX, you just go, well, this is brilliant. This is like, it's just ticking it off the list, isn't it? See NoFX when they were good. Brilliant, done that. Ideally in this order. And then see NoFX when they were dog shit. You go, oh, good. I'm glad I've seen that. It's good. Tick again. Normally that was at festivals. You could always guarantee a sort of it would lean more towards the not very good side at a festival. Particularly if it was in the middle of festival season, they were all getting a bit bored of it and stuff. So which is actually why one of the things Mike was talking about in that thing where he was saying that one of the reasons they're sort of splitting up is he's like, I've ruined my body with drugs and alcohol just to feel good enough to go on stage and do the job. And it's like, well, yeah, lots of people do that, and it's a shame that it gets to that. But he's like, but now I don't have to do that.
Yeah,
I've decided not to. And you go, well, he said, because it's about the line, we are the whores in The Decline. He's like, well, we're all whores. Everyone who sells their body in whatever way, someone who works in a mine, someone who works in a shop, a musician, a sex worker, we're all whores.
Yeah,
because you do ultimately sell your body and make it, let's face it, worse as a result of having to earn money with it. And it's a very difficult suggestion to refute. I certainly don't. Hello everyone, Eddie here. Red and I hope you're enjoying our show. If you have been and would like to help us make it a little more easily, then you can donate to us at our Ko-fi page, which is ko-fi.com/punkrockelite, or you can look in the show notes for our link tree. If you can't help us financially, we totally understand, but would love it if you spread the word to other people who would like this podcast. We thank you for your continued support. We massively appreciate it. Back to the show. Yeah, so All Out of Angst. I mean, this sort of little bit here, All Out of Angst, I'm telling Tim, the version that should have been all the way. You've got the male yell in there. You've got slightly revised lyrics. You've got the little guitar lead on it as well. Mm-hmm. It's just perfect. And what's that? 1 minute 17? Oh, just.
It's yet another NoFX song that when I actually look at its runtime, I can't believe it. I'm like, wait, that song's only that short, but there's so much to it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great because I didn't know what this was about for years and years and years. And it's about the guy who did the Maximum Rock and Roll zine. Mm-hmm. And all the rest of it, and it's about getting blacklisted and it's all this stuff, but it's sort of like this really charming little love letter to it, I think, anyway. But it's just, musically, it's just wonderful. It's relentless. And then at the end, it does a slow down half speed bit that really just sort of brings it back when it comes out. It's just, but like you say, 1 minute 17, and it doesn't need to be half a second longer.
Yeah,
it's just perfect. Fun cover time.
Yes, I was listening to this album right before we recorded this, and I was playing it in the living room, and this song came on, and Kate, my girlfriend, was like, oh, I actually like this one. I'm like, oh, but this is a cover.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not familiar with the original per se. I just know that I've heard it before. I don't know where it's from.
It's a bit of a standard, I think, in that sort of easy listening kind of thing. It's used over the end credits of the Darjeeling Limited, the film with Adrian Brody and other actors. Was it Wes Anderson? What? I can't remember.
It is Wes Anderson, yes, with Jason Schwartzman as well.
That's it, yes. Because I went to see this at the cinema with some friends of mine who they knew NoFX a bit through me. I was the NoFX fan. I'd sort of done them copies of stuff, but they all liked Champs Elysees because I think Claire, my friend, her dad was a music teacher, like a school music teacher, and so knew that had quite an eclectic taste of music and stuff. Been keeping up with it all over the years and stuff. And the end of Darjeeling Limited. It's not a spoiler to tell you that the final shot is just you follow a train down a track.
Well, it's all about trains, isn't it?
In the countryside, there is a train. So you follow a train down the track all the way as the credits roll, and it has the original I get the feeling this is one of those where you think the original, but it's actually there's one recorded a year before and one recorded. But and I was like, I do know this song, but because obviously it was done with a sort of a big band or like a sort of Herb Alberty sort of Tijuana brass vibe to it. It wasn't until it got Champs Elysees and the trumpet, and we all just started laughing loads because we were like, oh, that's right, it's this song. Yeah, it is proper good fun. Apparently, he just remembered being taught this song in his French lessons at school.
Oh, okay,
and they decided to do it, and it is proper charming.
I also it's a surprisingly popular song of theirs. I've seen them play this live a fair few times. It's it's become a NoFX signature song, really.
Very strange, but yes, it's like a second tier signature song. Really, it's kind of odd, I mean, if they didn't play it, it wouldn't be like them not playing Linoleum.
No, sure,
but it's also kind of wild that it's as popular as it is. But yeah, a little highlight as well for me, actually, just because I do find it so fun.
Yeah, it is. It's one of their more fun songs, I think, because a lot of their other fun songs usually has some sort of dark ulterior motive to it, but because this is a cover written, decades before,
it's face value. Entirely. So that's nice. And it actually goes into maybe the darkest song on the album, which obviously it does, because how else would you lay out this album, So Dad's Bad News, which I think is the most heavy petting zoo song on this album.
Yeah, it's sort of like mid-tempo, isn't it?
It's got a trudge to it, but it's got a lot of things that are lacking on Heavy Petting Zoo, to my mind. It has a melody. It's got some nice harmonies on it. There's actual sort of songwriting going on in there, for me anyway, about depression and possibly paranoid schizophrenia running in the family.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I mean, yeah, take that, Champs Elysees.
Something about grade A psycho dick. That's just a really funny line.
Yes, it is. That's a grade A psychotic.
Oh, is it? I always thought it was psycho dick.
So did I. I thought that for you. I'd not even looked that up.
Oh, yes, grade A psychotic. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to still sing psycho dick because I think the disrespect is funnier. I mean, this line here might actually be in the running for my favorite lyric. You can see it from the hole in his head. A saner man would have used a bigger gun. Brilliant. That's pretty great. I mean, but there's a whole load of fucking spooky horror goth metal types out there going, oh shit, that was good. But yeah. So but anyway, this features a tambourine played by Ryan Green, the producer.
Yes,
a little tambourine in the "No Simple Way to Tell You Some," that bit.
And he's produced a lot of their stuff, right?
Yes, he's responsible for the Fat Sound. I think he came on for Punk and Drublic.
And I wonder how much time and effort and thought was gone into, because I think this has such a different sound to Punk and Drublic, but there is something that it sounds very quintessential NoFX, and I wonder if they sort of like had a conversation where they're like, we want this album to have its own sound, but we don't want it to have Punkin Drublik's sound.
I think the guitars are a lot less heavy.
Yes, I
the
agree.
gain is reduced a lot on this album because, in fact, if we're talking about Dad's Bad News with the palm muted chugging guitars, those don't sound super, whereas they would do on maybe Heavy Petting Zoo, or if you took the guitar tone from Punkin Drublik and like chugged it really hard, it would be a very, very fat, saturated, heavily distorted sound, whereas this is a lot cleaner. And I think it suits NoFX more. Slightly cleaner guitars. You know, they're not always totally clean. There's, you know, if you do a nice big power chord, it'll sound good, but that's when you really twat shit out of it. I've always liked a tone you've got to kind of fight out of a guitar. There are some metal bands where you're sort of very gently tapping the strings and it's coming out. It's like, earn it. Come on, actually hit the thing. It's made of wood. You're not going to damage it. So, that's what I like. But great. Dad's Bad News. That's cool. We get to a bit of shit stirring in Kill Rock Stars.
Yes. Now, am I right in thinking this song is low-key about, well, not even necessarily low-key, but it's about the singer from La Tigre or La Tigre?
Kathleen Hanna, yes. Who I think she's married to a Beastie Boy.
Oh, really?
Yes. She was from Bikini Kill.
Yeah.
And then La Tigre.
Which I'm kind of got, because La Tigre have just done a short tour of the UK, and I did kind of want to go to that. Like, they are a band that I miss.
Yes, it is a shame. It's I think I like Bikini Kill more than La Tigre, but La Tigre are pretty cool. But yeah, she had a record label, maybe still has it, called Kill Rock Stars, and on Decepticon, which is a song, she makes fun of the song Linoleum, or she references Linoleum. She says, your lyrics are dumb.
Really? In Decepticon? That's like one of their biggest songs.
Your lyrics are dumb like a linoleum floor. I'll walk on it. I'll walk all over you. So
sure.
That's what she wrote in response to this song, Kill.
Oh, so that was in response to this?
Yes. It was an idea that the whole idea is this sort of.
The thing, I mean, you can't threaten Mike with walking all over him. I mean, he pays women good money for that.
That's true. We didn't know that at the time. This is very much closeted Mike.
Right. Yes.
So the being.
I mean, now I think about it, like, this album is a little sexless.
Yes. It is actually. Yeah. There's a song about, being in love with the monosyllabic girl. Might as well be a bloody Blink-182 song. There's that little sex in it. Because it's funny, because even when Blink-182 write about sex, they write about sex as if they've never had it before, which is really funny. Lord love them. But it's...
Because, it's just one of the staples of NoFX is, a lot of lyrics about, not even necessarily about sex itself, but about, like...
sexuality.
Yeah, and gender politics. I suppose there's a little bit of that with Kill Rock Stars.
I mean, Kill Rock Stars, yeah, it's a sort of... I think it was what Mike considered to be some hypocrisy about some sort of anti-men... what's the word? Anti-man, like anti-man, rhetoric, I suppose, or that kind of thing. Some sort of anti-man statements made by Kathleen Hanna that he felt were sort of the same thing as misogyny, but flipped.
Yeah.
what losers online would now immediately screenshot and caption as Miss Andre. But it was basically the line in it is, I thought the goal here was mutual respect. And it's sort of the idea, because I think she'd referred to them as being like frat boy punk bands like NoFX.
Sure.
And obviously Mike being a sort of a closeted, sissy, a closeted, what we now know as sort of essentially being queer, probably felt quite hurt by that in that,
well, I mean,
there's been pro-feminism messages in NoFX since pretty much the start. So
absolutely, and and I suppose, to be fair, like a fair few that weren't quite in that vein.
They didn't put it on a plate for you, but it was there. So if and I absolutely appreciate that people who hadn't paid much more than surface level attention to NoFX could very easily miss that.
But I will say, like, having listened now to their back catalogue up until this point through this podcast, I mean, like, even from the outset, I do find it strange, this view that they are sort of like a fratty band. Like, yeah, sure, there are silly songs, like there are songs with dumb takes or whatever.
I mean, I'm mainly thinking of On the Rag.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which has it front and center.
Hot Dog Down a Hallway.
Oh yeah, Hot Dog in a Hallway. But again, that's sort of because Mike, not so much anymore, it would seem, but Mike had a thing for big women.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where that's gone, because just one day he stopped talking about it. I don't know if
he's got new kinks. I mean, like, there's only so many kinks.
That's true. I suppose it's like sorting out your suitcase in a Resident Evil game. It's like, well, if I take the big girl kink, I'm not going to be able to take the piss kink. So I'll leave the big girl kink in the cabinet, and I'll take the piss kink with me. All right, that's a good idea. You are coming up to a boss after all.
I think that is one of the best analogies I've ever heard. Kinks are like a briefcase in Resident Evil.
Yeah,
I get it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. He moves all the green herb out for white powder, so it's it's a little easier for him that way. So there was a little bit of a spat back and forth, although Mike does consider Decepticon to be Le Tigre's best song, because he mentioned them in Linoleum.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So he said something to the effect of, he was talking about, Linoleum's legacy, and said, when it's featured in Le Tigre's best song. So that's nice. But yeah, so that one is, musically, I think it's great. It's lovely, fast. It just sounds incredibly good. So really, really nice. Really nice there. We're sort of, and then we go from that very fast slice of action to Eat the Meek, one of the low key NoFX classics.
Absolutely, and I think for me, one of the highlights of this album. I've said, I love the ska on this album, and Eat the Meek really does have everything you want from a NoFX ska number. It's delightful, up to and including a little bit of a Jamaican accent.
Yes. I mean, the thing is that, all right, Mike has said stuff over the years, and people like that. No one has ever picked up Jefe for his range of non-Mexican accents, but I guess that's the pass you get.
I did notice, though, on a few listens, it's kind of only the opening verse that has a Jamaican twang to it.
Yes, there's a lilt to it, I suppose, isn't there? Like Kill All the White Man, that's obviously that's sort of a joke song as well, even though it's great. But it's this one is, but it's also, I mean, it's really, really great when they do it live now, with Karina joining in as well, with her penchant for. By the way, drink, everyone, if you're waiting for me to mention Karina Denike. You can all finish your drinks now. But especially with her sort of fondness for reggae and stuff, and blending in with all of that stuff. It is great, and I always forget how good it is. It's just one of those ones that never jumps to my mind when I think of NoFX songs, probably
Hmm.
because it's so out of character. Because it's not even like ska in a sort of ska punk way. It's like straight up reggae vibes, you know.
It's one of the songs that when I was like getting into NoFX, when I heard Eat the Meek, it was like, oh, what? Like they are like a proper band with like genuine range who can do like
Yeah,
all
yeah,
sorts of stuff. Like this isn't just a punk band, and it certainly isn't just a pop punk band. Like
yeah,
they have got so many strings to their bow.
yeah. I think you could easily make someone a playlist, and they would think, and you'd think that they're just like a sort of a Blink 182 style joke band,
Yeah,
because you could just do them mainly songs about, silly daft stuff, and then a couple of like slight, well, no, they don't do any like mawkish sincere love songs, but a couple of sort of straight up sort of romantic or love songs,
my heart
stuff
is
like that.
yearning.
Well, yeah, well, that's it. That's the perfect blend. But that's that kind of thing. Or you could, just do all their ska stuff and all that kind of thing. I remember ages ago, Rancid released a couple of best ofs, and they call them All the Punk Rockers and the Moon Stompers. So they did
Mhm.
all their best punk songs on an LP, and all of their best ska stuff,
Mhm.
ska, reggae, world, whatever, on another one. And I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. And I thought, oh, NoFX could probably manage that.
Absolutely, they could. Yeah.
And I think I think both of them would be hugely strong, but I I think of them as both as doing all of that. I don't differentiate NoFX doing ska to NoFX doing punk rock. Not with Rancid either, really. But Rancid don't do that thing of ska verse, punk chorus.
Yeah.
They play it sort of straight two tone ska or punk rock. They don't blend them
Yeah.
in the middle of the same song
Yeah.
in a more sort of US ska punk, what you think of as like the third wave ska punk movement, which is,
Mm-hmm.
oh, we've got a verse here, and then everyone sing along when we jump on the distortion box. Yeah, that kind of vibe. So, by the way, if you're listening, don't cry. Perfectly valid. It's fine. Ska fans can be like that, It's
I
they
think
really are. They really are the improvisers of the musical world. But
I think Eat the Meek is a fantastic gift to their live set as well.
yeah, yeah,
Like I think
absolutely.
there's a lot of tunes on this which alter the face of their live set really.
Mm. Oh yeah, absolutely. I think so, and I think because they are so, because they're not those overthought complex things, they can be recreated comfortably or
Yes.
improved on, even a better live, if you like. I mean, I think a lot of that's the case for a lot of their stuff. There's a lot of bands you can never quite capture that live sound in the studio. Some people can get close, but this, yeah. So Eat the Meek, and then we come into the last four, which are
But
quite.
does one question though about
Go on,
Eat
go
the
on.
Meek, does Mike play bass and sing Eat the Meek live?
He does, but it's not as complex.
Right.
It's not as walky. It's
Yeah.
more dung 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 kind of thing. It's more,
Sure.
yeah. If it was faster, then I imagine he'd find it difficult. But yes, he does. He does for most of them, to be honest. It's only
Hmm.
Rico that he swaps with
Yeah.
Melvin for, that I'm aware of. If I'm wrong, do let me know, dear listener. But yeah, Desperation's gone. Love it.
Yeah.
Not really much to say. It sort of feels very at home on this album.
Yeah, but I would also say I think the Desperation's Gone is almost not quite as much as the ones that you've said before, but like almost a little bit heavy petting zoo. Um, I could imagine this song on that album and it not
Oh,
feeling
maybe.
horrendously out of place. I think the other two you've mentioned are more so in that vein.
Yeah, I guess so. I suppose it could be put on there, but I don't hear that as much myself, I've got to say. But I do, yeah, I like the Desperation's Gone.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get to the Flossing a Dead Horse, a little Herb Albert inspired instrumental.
Oh, it's lovely.
Yeah, it's great. It's very, I don't know why. It seems like a weird one to throw in, but it's sort of, it's weird because they're not a band that jam with each other particularly.
Mm-hmm.
So this one would have been sort of written rather than something they've come up with, because
What?
they used to do they used to open by with their sound check, which is when their keyboardist, it was Limo at the time, one of their roadies, would come out and start playing Heart and Soul on the keyboard. And then the band would slowly join in, and Hefe would join in on the trumpet.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'd do it in a Flossing a Dead Horse style, and that would be their opening number. I remember seeing them do that a couple of times, I think.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that on videos on YouTube and stuff
yeah.
that. I wonder if because the lead trumpet in Flossing a Dead Horse, it really does feel like, almost like a vocal melody of a song. And I wonder if there was at one point it was meant to be the vocal line, and then they couldn't quite get the words or tone of it right. And they're like, oh, should we just, stick a do a trumpet on there? Because it just feels like the way Mike writes songs, the way he writes vocal melodies, it kind of fills that space in the song.
Yeah, I suppose so. But then I suppose that is like the Herb Albert kind of influence that he has in the Tijuana Brass. So that just reminded me of a bit of trivia. You know the film Hook?
I do, yeah.
The Peter Pan sequel with Robin Williams. That was originally going to be a musical.
Oh.
All of the score that you hear in that all had lyrics.
No way.
Yeah. They were going to make it like a full-fledged musical, but presumably they put in how much all the sets were going to cost. And they went, yeah, we can't afford to make this a musical as well. So I went, all right, then fine. So that's my guess anyway, but yeah. So we're coming into Quart in Session, a song about Smelly.
Yeah, I will say that I don't really remember Quart in Session.
It's nothing seems much fun.
Oh, it's that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I think this has a very similar keyboard sound to Franco on American, and I wonder if it's the same synth.
Does it have a synth on it?
Yeah. In the it has like a burp, 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 burp.
That's guitar feedback.
Really?
That's guitar feedback. One of the pickups with the volume turned down, and then just flicking the toggle as it's up against the.
Because it sounds to me like a very similar synth sound to the the synth line in Franco and American.
As far as I'm aware, there are no keyboards on this, but yeah, that's I think
of course because
at the end it goes and then it starts to squeal the feedback.
Yes, of course. Oh, how interesting!
Yep, it's a song a bit like "Wore Out the Soles of My Party Boots." You familiar with that one? It's a sort of I can't drink anymore because I've done too much drinking, and it was Mike writing that about Smelly.
It's
and then it takes on a very different tone in 2023.
It is a really good song, and I do like it. I feel like it probably could have been called "Nothing Seems Much Fun Anymore" to me.
Well, it's it loves a pun title, does that boy?
Sure.
But and then we come to the final track, "Falling in Love." This is a good one. I think this is a strong closer. In fact, I think for don't really talk about how they close albums, but this is for me is a very strong closer because again, it's only 2 minutes 17, and it starts off with that sort of very lo-fi, and then the drums come in, and then it explodes, and so the intro is really long, and then it's about people literally falling out of the sky in a plane. So yeah, falling in love. But yeah, and then those harmonies at the end.
Yeah.
It's just really, really wonderful.
Doing their
Only
best Bad Religion impression.
Oh yeah. It's real Bad Religion vibes on that. In a very, very good way, which shows how far they've come from in what 12 years since Ribbed.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's what the legacy of this album is, isn't it? It's like showing you like the progression of the band.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This for me in a personal favorite thing. This is where they hit their peak for me. There is a secret track on here. We discussed it briefly last time, which is Howard Stern hearing "Drugs Are Good" and saying it sounds like disco, and then saying "No FX, no talent," and then all of his minions going, "Oh, you're so clever, Howard.
I find it's
Really
just
going
like
to stick it to Tipper Gore."
I'm not that familiar with Howard Stern. I'm aware of him. I know like his stance in the culture. I guess like I know that he's a big like cultural figure in America, but like his criticism of it in this final bit is like he says like that's just not rocking. That's not rocking. And I'd love what is like a quintessential Howard Stern track. What was he like? Was he into Kiss or something? Like what was?
No idea. I really couldn't say. I know he was very, very brown nosy in a thing I saw where Dave Grohl was on his show. So maybe he likes his rock a little more. I don't think he likes it at either side of the road. I think he likes it to follow the line down the middle. But I don't know. He might have the fucking choicest, sweet ass music taste you've ever heard. I don't know. I just don't know enough. But yeah. But certainly NoFX have done fine without the Howard Stern stamp of approval. So I don't think, and I think they put it on there because they thought it was funny.
Absolutely, yeah. You can tell it's just been taken with the just
yeah, of course.
They've just laughed it off, like
yeah, of course. And also, they were. I think in the liner notes, I pored over these as a young one. Would you like to hear the 10 answers to the most asked 10 questions we'd never like to be asked again?
Absolutely.
This is all handwritten by Mike. Number 1, how's the tour going? None of your business. When are you coming back? Hopefully never. Where do you play tomorrow? Another overpriced club. What does NoFX mean? Your mama. Why do they call you Fat Mike? You're not fat. I've been sick. How long has NoFX been playing for? 15 years, which makes our band older than you. Why was your last album so slow? Because we thought the executives at MTV would like us more. What do you think about Green Day and The Offspring? Green Day have cute and well-behaved offspring. Was El Jefe really in the Bad News Bears? Yes. He wasn't. Where do you see NoFX going in 10 years? Down. So there they are. That's them. Yes, it does. It says in the liner notes, NoFX is Jefe, Mel, Smelly, and Fatty. Additional superior musicians on the record were Serge Slovnik on the tuba and trombone, Nate Albert on the chanky guitar, Ryan Green on the tambourine. Backup vocals by Spike Slauson, Eric Melvin, El Jefe, and Adam Crystalboy. I don't know that. That's about it, really. And then some, thanking all of the people who did it. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I think the sound of it is very specific. You can tell when something was recorded for this album, I think.
Yeah.
It stands out quite a lot because the next major release was The Decline, which sounds more like this than any other album, but is also its own thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think anyway, to my recollection. And then the next sort of full-length release was Pump Up the Vallum.
Yeah, and that's a big jump, I think.
I think so, yes, I agree. I think the next release we've got to do is The Decline, really.
Yeah, because I think like this is almost for me, like I see this as like the end of their mid period. I feel like you have early NoFX from Animal Liberation up until before Punk and Drublic. I'd say Punk and Drublic to this is like their mid period, and then afterwards, they kind of have like two late periods almost.
They they have. I think they. I tend to divide it up as pre-Hefe.
Sure.
So I sort of go, which basically cuts it into 80s NoFX,
Yeah.
and then 90s NoFX. And Pump Up the Vallum was released in 2000
Mm.
and does set the trajectory, because I think after that it was, what was it, Wolves in Wolves Clothing? I forget.
There's Surfer, which
Oh
is
yeah,
an
that's
EP,
an EP.
then a split.
Oh, War on Errorism was after Pump Up the Vallum.
Ah, wow.
And that, so I think that War on Errorism was a bit of a change. So I'm going to include Pump Up the Vallum in the 90s.
Oh, really? Because I find, and I haven't listened to Pump Up the Vallum in a long time, but I find Pump Up the Vallum quite similar sounding to War and Arrowism. But I haven't listened to them in a while, so
Maybe again, I'm absolutely happy to change that. Should I be? But yeah, so yeah, next time we'll do the decline. What are your sort of final thoughts on So Long and Thanks for All the Shoes?
I'm glad I've re-listened to it because I do feel a little bit closer to the album than I did. There's just something that keeps me at arm's length from this album, and I think it is what we mentioned earlier about the guitars not being particularly riffy, not particularly beefy, and the album in general sounding quite trebly.
Yes.
I obviously I think it's great that it's done that so that it feels like its own thing. Like I feel like this album has its own unique sound, and I think that's brilliant and something that should be commended. It just happens to not be personally my favorite sound that they have made. But there's some absolute bangers on here.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I will once again say this has my favorite ska tracks of any NoFX album.
I don't think they ever do ska with as much gusto.
Yeah. And different types of ska as well. Like I think that All Out Angst, Eat the Meek, and to a certain extent Flossing a Dead Horse are very different.
I think they do. Oh, they do like Anarchy Camp. Is that on Errorism? I think. Is that Errorism or Wolves? I forget.
I'm not familiar. I don't think it's on Wolves.
Okay, it could be on Errorism then. But they do a bit of it here and there, but never as much as on here, or never as successfully. I don't think. Maybe.
Well, I think it sits in with the sound that they've made on this album. They've made everything quite trebly, so it makes sense to do them here.
That's true, and I think it is. I think it's sort of just reinforced that it is my favourite.
It's also lovely to listen to this album at this time of year because there is something that is very summery.
I think if we'd done this in November, it might have been maybe a different story. But it's it's weird when you don't need bottom end.
Yeah,
it's pretty good. But yeah,
what's your like standout tracks on this?
Oh gosh, so many.
Because I know you're a big fan of this album, so I'm interested to hear like what are your particular standout moments.
It's interesting because I sort of consider this to be like a symphony, like a piece entirely. I would say, I'm Telling Tim. Eat the Meek, Falling in Love, My Job to Keep Punk Rock Elite.
Yeah.
Murder the Government and Monosyllabic Girl taken as one.
Yeah, fair.
There's not a skipper on here for me at all.
I really like All His Suits Are Torn.
Yes.
And it was actually on re-listening to it for this podcast that made me realize actually how much I like that song, because I think previously I'd seen it as just a little bit of an album track, and I certainly don't anymore.
Yeah, I think this I was thinking, I don't know if this does have any standout tracks, but I think it's because they all stand out to me. They're sort of
Fair, yeah.
they're all made average by being so high. if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
But again, I think my relationship with this album is fairly singular amongst my relationships with other NoFX albums. Like, I was at university when War on Errorism came out, so that was quite a different Eddie to the Eddie that picked this up in 1998. When I'd have been 15. Which makes this band precisely the same age as me. So I, and realizing that you could have this rather than just the new metal stuff, which I didn't like, because I wasn't that. I liked the music that was coming out of Britpop and stuff like that, but I liked sort of Suede and Pulp a little bit more because they were a bit more androgynous. They weren't quite as macho. I liked Oasis's music quite a lot, the first couple of records, particularly the ones that were a little more sort of, but there was a very swaggery, braggadocious thing amongst the sort of indie kids. It was like Men Behaving Badly, New Lad kind of thing, where everyone was a bit sort of, get on the lager, put your best shirt on, don't take any shit from anyone. Are you giving me shit? What the fuck are you looking at, Puff? That kind of shit. And I was like, whilst the music I quite enjoyed, I was like, I don't like this at all. And so this lot, and then you find out that the pictures on the inside aren't even of the band. I was like, there's something going on here. And and then it's like, oh no, there's other music. Listen to this rock music. And then you've got gonna break your fucking face tonight. Yeah, of course, Yaldir. Sit down. It's just like, it's exactly the same shit, just with a fucking baggy trousers on. I don't need this bollocks. So disagreeing with Kathleen Hanna as I have done in the past, I would say that this was my non-fratty entry into music that, while it may not be the most cerebral of all the punk rock, it's actually a lot more cerebral than people give it a lot of credit for. So
yeah, I think it's there's a lot in this album that doesn't jump out at you as being brilliant, but I think behind the scenes there's some very clever production going on that isn't as noticeable.
I think this is one of those life-changing albums, which means that I have to take it as an entirety. I can't. So, like, I really loved Punk in Drublic. I still do. But, I'd sort of be like, oh, Laurie Myers is coming up. Oh, this one,
Yeah.
And this one is just the entire thing. It would be like, you just listen to Beethoven's Fifth. You don't go, I'm going to skip to this bit. You just listen to the whole 40 minutes of it and go, that's how it's supposed to be listened to. And same with this.
Yeah, you know what? I think I will agree with you there. I think this is their most consistent album. Like, it's not full of peaks and troughs like albums usually are. It just kind of starts at a level of high quality, and I do think it continues throughout.
And I think that little experiment of theirs to do the 20-minute songs and stuff like that, ironically, their next experiment was a 20-minute song, but the thing, and I suppose once you've successfully done that, you do go, well, I think it was basically Mike was, we'll talk about that during the decline. I'm not going to regurgitate Krista Meck's podcast here now. We'll wait until next time to do that. But I think it's a wonderful piece of work, and yes, might be a desert island disc for me. If I could have the whole thing. So
I'd love to know what people think about this album as well. Like, do email us and like...
Absolutely. Please don't, not that anyone has so far, but please don't hold back just because this album means something to me. But I understand that Heavy Petting Zoo will mean something to you lot. And we've not, at the time of recording this, we've not released Heavy Petting Zoo episode yet. So, soz.
yeah. Sorry about that.
If you're listening to this one, then that's very big of you, and we appreciate it. but that album will mean as much to someone as this one does to me, and hearing people say negative things about it, I imagine it will sting. But that's only because I've invested a lot of my of my very limited personality into this. So, that's how it goes, I guess. But yeah, please do let us know. punkrockelitepodcast@gmail.com. Yeah, great stuff. What were your highlights?
I think obviously I like All His Suits Are Torn. I like All Out Angst. I think it's got a cracking opening number in It's My Job to Keep Punk Rock Elite. Again, Falling in Love is, and Eat the Meek, I think, are like really standout songs in that I think that they are slightly cleverer than the standard NoFX song.
Sure.
And some lovely fun bits in the middle. I'm Telling Tim Champs-Élysées.
Yes.
It's, it is a pretty consistently brilliant album.
Yes. Wonderful. Well, there we go. Well, let's do this one properly. We'll jump back out and we'll see you all in the outro. Well, there we go. I think no more can be said about that at all, academically or otherwise. We've really, really nailed it.
We've said all of the words that could have been said about this beautiful album.
It's really a wondrous, wondrous thing. Have you... Because I've heard in a few places, and I don't know if this is just because of the name, but some people have said, oh, this was supposed to be their last album, but it did quite well, so they carried on.
Yeah, I think Ali Bryce told us that, didn't he?
Oh, yes, I think that does sound familiar. But I don't know if that's a rumor or not, or just a sort of assumption people make because of the name or anything. So I really don't know.
I think there are a lot of rumors that circulate around NoFX in general, because, like back in the 90s, they didn't really even do interviews for a long stretch of their career. So I feel like there's a lot of myths out there.
There are.
Also, Mike lies.
That's true. Mike often talks about how he never lies, but he does bullshit.
He does change his mind a lot.
Oh, he changes his mind. A girl's prerogative, after all. But I think when he talks about how he never lies, I think he means like, oh, if I don't like something, I won't say I like that, and that kind of thing. I think he will give bullshit answers for his own amusement.
Yeah,
because there's stuff like there's the thing about, oh, was El Jefe in the film The Bad News Bears? And he's like, oh yeah, he was in that. And he wasn't. So I think what he means is he never lies when it's something actually important. Maybe that's for big deals. If someone comes up and go, Mike, have you been saying shit about me? He'll go, oh yeah. Well, I think he once said, Henry Rollins in an interview said Henry Rollins doesn't like me very much. He keeps trying to fight me. And someone said, "Oh, why is that?" He goes, "Oh, he said I was talking shit about him." And the interviewer said, "Well, were you?" He goes, "Well, yeah." Like, well, it's fair enough, isn't it? If you're going to talk, I think it's that thing of if you're going to talk shit about someone and then go, "Me, no, mate, no," that's kind of shitty. But yeah, so I don't know. I think it's because they're Douglas Adams fans, and it was so long and thanks for all the fish, and that kind of thing. So
I was told they were just given a lot of free shoes at their Warp Tour. From the Warp Tour, they would just get a lot of free shoes from various like skateboarding companies that sponsored.
I know they thanked Airwalk before for giving them free shoes, but I understood it as being that people used to throw shoes on the stage.
Fair enough.
People used to, because I mean, certainly the trendier skate shoe, your DC, your Etny, your something like that, the big chunky soft boys, very often slipped on with the laces left undone.
Yeah.
They'll come off if you're crowd surfing or if you're in a circle pit or something like that. They'll come straight off.
They'll hurt as well, quite chunky buggers.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're very soft and padded, but
true.
But given that I sort of barely wore anything other than Converse style shoes since I was about 16 until Just checking what I'm wearing today. Nope, pair of Vans. But but until very very recently, that was sort of basically the only kind of non-formal shoe I would wear. Always laces done up, so you can't steal my shoes at a punk gig. Well, and that's not a challenge, by the way, because you're very unlikely. I'm going to almost say almost definitely unlikely to see me atop a crowd. Crowd surfing. I'm too unwieldy. I'm too big to put people through that. So I did do when I was younger, but not very often. Sometimes to get a different spot. I did it. I was just trying to think. That was the worst crowd surfing experience I ever had was at a Stereophonics gig, because obviously it was. It was just after they'd released their second album, and it was 80% of the audience's first gig ever. So they didn't understand. It was horrible.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and it was a shit album as well, which, first one was quite good. Anyway, any closing thoughts on So Long?
It's a good album, and I agree, it's one of their better ones, but on a re-listen, I do think it's interesting that it actually sounds quite unique against the rest of their catalogue. Just like sonically, I know we've spoken about it a lot in the main body of the episode, but I just think it has a very different sound to their other albums, but it also sounds super familiar, and I think that's really interesting.
It's as unique a sounding album as Heavy Petting Zoo is, I think.
Ah, yes.
Because they're both, and I think they're sort of like the pendulum swing. Like Heavy Petting Zoo sounds markedly different to most of their albums, and So Long sounds equally different in a almost opposite way, in that there's hardly any bottom end. It's a lot more bright. It's a lot more present. Whereas I find Heavy Petting Zoo to be kind of depressing sonically. We've been through this. We don't need to murky up these waters again.
Previously on Punk Rock Elite.
Yeah. I just don't get it. Why does it sound like this? Rubbish. Punk Rock Elite now continues. That was one of the funniest jokes I've ever heard in South Park. Was they did it was one of their multi-part episodes, and right at the beginning of the second part, Cartman just goes, "Previously on Battlestar Galactica." made me laugh so much, and I have no idea why. It was just really funny. So there you go.
Do get in touch if you've got any views, thoughts, interesting facts about this album that we failed to mention.
Absolutely.
Always interested to hear what listeners have to say.
Yep, punkrockelitepodcast at gmail.com. And follow us on Instagram with that's the only social media we do, really. You can find us on Facebook as well, but it's mainly stuff from Instagram that's getting shared to Facebook as well. You're not going to find us on X.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, you might find me on X on a weekend, but
that's true. Yeah, that is true. Yeah, I won't be on it, and as a podcast, we won't be collectively on X, but Elon Musk's X. I mean, we
isn't
all
that
know.
Grimes?
It is Grimes, isn't it? Yeah, that's it's a funny way to name name a thing after someone, isn't it? Just their relationship to you. It's like, well, I've named this social media platform after my father. It's called Dad. Okay, well, I guess so. I guess if you spend that much money, you want to really put your own mark on it. It's a bit like buying a house and then spray painting the word mine on it and then blowing it up with dynamite. Still. But whilst telling everyone what a good idea and what a clever boy you are whilst you're doing it. Anyway.
Very clever boy.
Absolutely. Although, oh God, we didn't even talk about the fact that Justin Sane released a statement.
Oh, did he? I've not seen that. Well, I'll have to go and read that.
Yeah, it's saying that the accusations are not true. And then Anti-Flag, the other three, I know wild. And then Anti-Flag, the other three, they released a statement saying these accusations are horrible and absolutely the antithesis of what we believe, and as such, the only thing we can do is split up because it's so the antithesis of our own perspectives. And we hope survivors of this can heal. And there was some people have said, "Oh, no solidarity." It's like, what, with a rapist? Come on. So yeah, it seems like Anti-Flag are not going to be continuing in any way. But yeah, Just Insane released a rather tepid response. No comments, thanks. But do have a look at who likes it, just in case.
I do feel sorry for bands when like lead singers turn out to be the wrong uns, because I think you can replace drummers and guitarists and stuff, but if the member that left wrote all of the words to those songs, it's a bit trickier to reform with a new member. I'm thinking like Lost Prophets. I don't like Lost Prophets musically personally, but I feel sorry for the other members of the band that they don't get to tour those songs that they made very successful and popular.
Well, they tried to make music again as a different, but I think it was
I think they tried to make some electronic music, didn't they, under the name Defiance, I want to say. But maybe
your memory may well be stronger than mine on this. I just know that the other members of Lost Prophets went, right, let's make some music. And I think it was them, they were like, let's process this in a healthy way. But the rest of the world were like, you might want to leave this just a little longer, because I don't know if we're ready for that, because there's obviously still suspicions of how much do the other members know. I mean, the Lost Prophets is a very extreme and unpleasant case. Much more out of the ordinary. Whereas apparently the Anti-Flag one sounds like a story that's pretty common, which is nauseating in another way. But so that's it's a great shame it's a great shame that it happened, and
an even greater shame that we're ending this wonderful episode on this note.
I know. I should have made a note really and mentioned it earlier, because that was one of the reasons that we're now recording the intros and outros much closer to the time of release, so we can address things happening in the punk world. Because I only just realised, I might put this in earlier, I might not. I only just realised that I think at some point in Ali's interview, talk about how, because Anti-Flag played at Hatfield, and Ali was going, "Yeah, I love Anti-Flag," and I'm hoping that we've made it clear that Ali's interview was recorded a long time ago now, like a month ago.
Oh yeah,
like quite a long time ago. So no one's got in touch. No one's said, "Fucking hell, I was enjoying that," until he said that weird thing.
Well, Ali Bryce is cancelled now.
Oh, I can't believe we inadvertently cancelled Ali. Oh, well. Still, this should mean his ticket sales at Edinburgh go through the fucking roof. So we did it for you, Ali. Well done, mate. I've edited it so it sounds like he's likes them now. But I'm pretty sure Lily from the Meths also said that having Anti-Flag watch him was like a real thrill and stuff like that. And it's yeah. But again, this all happened a long time ago. So a month or two ago. So yeah, if you hear any of those things, just have a look at the timeline. Solidarity to all the victims of all of the people who behave like Just Insane has done. Brackets allegedly, close brackets. But So yes. Anyway, we'll be back next week with something pretty special.
Yeah, special guest next week.
Special guest.
Put it in your diary.
Yeah, absolutely. It's well worth checking out, because they're taking some time out of recording an album, which is nice. And as we mentioned earlier, there's a particular social media platform, the single letter, which in Roman numerals will tell you the number album that this artist is currently recording.
Oh, I understand what you just said. That's clever.
Just dropping a little clue there. I don't want to drop too big a clue because, again, until it's actually recorded and safely stored in the computer, can't ever reveal too much. But we're excited about it, and I think you'll all get a kick out of it. So, thanks, Red.
Thank you, Eddie.
Welcome. See you all soon. Bye-bye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to Punk Rock Elite. It was a Pick Scraped and Fruitcake co-production by Eddie French and Red Redmond. If you're not following us on Instagram or subscribed to the podcast, please do. The main theme and production was done by Eddie French. Please contact us at punkrockelitepodcast@gmail.com. Thank you.